Everybody, bright and early. For those who are just commenting on the West Coast, this is bright and early for us. Welcome to App Store's Navigating Pervasive Landscape of Native and Responsive Design in Hybrid Applications. The reason I picked that title is I just won buzzword bingo with that. So I think I got everything that I needed on that. So my name is Tom Freestone. I'm from BYU. Sort of the background of where this talk came from is the last year, BYU's been really trying to understand our mobile environment. And so this is sort of the conglomeration of several studies we did, research we did, and kind of putting it all together. And what I'd like to do with this is sort of take a little bit of a journey here and kind of lay out the whole mobile landscape. When you search on that, you usually end up with papers on it's all mobile or it's all native and there's a big, huge job. But what I'd like to do is basically start first with the users, just understand what they're doing, and then talk a little bit about how we can react on that, and then what this means for uPortal and that. So that's kind of what we're at. It's really me, in case you see anybody else in Australia with a white shirt on. So when I was getting ready to come on this trip, there I was, standing at the airport in the security line, and everyone knows this drill, right? You get there, you stand in line, you wait with all your devices, and as a technical guy, I get in line, and then I take my belt off, I take my shoes off. And then comes like the longest 3 minutes of my life because I have like multiple laptops, I have all these gadgets. So I'm there, start unloading everything, 5 minutes worth. And I look at the guard and I see that look on his face.
They're playing Mario Brothers next door.
I was like, that's interesting.
It's a game of It's not just you.
It's like, I know it's early here, but I got this like background noise. Yeah, so whoever's watching this video, that's not me. So anyway, back to my story. I'm sitting there in line, and you see the guys, I'm unloading all these laptops. I put my bag up, there's laptop 1, laptop 2, here's my phone, all my different gadgets coming out of everywhere. He's got that look on his face, like, is that a really nice laptop? Time to upgrade, right? He's going to steal my laptop from me. So the real look on his face is, how many laptops do you need? That's what he's thinking. He's like, you have 5 minutes worth of screens basically on you. And as I'm going through the line, I'm thinking, why in the world do I have all these laptops? Why do I have all these gadgets on me? Why am I got a 300-pound backpack when I'm carrying through security? And the fact of the matter is, we're technical guys. We have a different context for it. We have the fuel-efficient laptop that's great for presenting, that runs great on batteries. I have my development laptop that all the lights dim when I do a compile. That's the kind of world we have. It's context, right? And we think about it, we use different screens a lot. Right? And when I say a lot, what do I mean? If you see throughout here, there's a Google paper that I'm citing, so that's where these statistics come from. But if you look at it, in our leisure time, about 90% of our time is spent on these devices, which averages out to about 4.4 hours a day. Okay? And that's usually with computers, laptops, smartphones, tablets, TV, which is actually saying something as computer people. We usually work an 8-hour job, right? And then we spend about 4 hours of our time doing different things in front of screens, right? So that's about 12 hours a day. We're in front of some sort of screen altogether.
You want me to ask for that down a little bit?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
That's horrifying. Really, so beyond working, we spend 4.5 hours a day staring at screens instead of like going outside and seeing trees.
I know. And 10% of our time, actually, the other, like you might wonder what's left of our time, we spend on radio, newspaper, books, and magazines. Which, you think about it, I mean, I look at my life here at the conference, what's the first thing I do when I get back to my room? I turn on the TV, and I plug my laptop in and start going to town, right? And I spend another 4 hours of that, right? So you sit here and say, okay, well, how does that break down, right? So you look on here on your cell phone, you're spending about 17 minutes per interaction. So whatever you do, you spend about, on average, 17 minutes. On your tablet, about 30 minutes. On your PC, 39 minutes. And 43 minutes in front of the TV. That's on average based on, and granted, these weren't technical people. They were just your average run-of-the-mill Americans they did this study on to kind of break it down. So the question I can ask is, well, which one of these do you choose, and why do you choose these, right? I mean, obviously, context is king. When I show up to a conference like this, I'm not wheeling in my 50-inch screen just because I want to do gaming while I'm here, right? I mean, that's just not going to work. I'm not going to run that through security, right? Likewise, I mean, you need context. When I use the word context, I kind of broken it down into basically 4 things. First, the time in which I want to interact with things, right? When I say time, is it something I need really fast? Is this like just in time, I need this information now? Or is it something I have time to research out? The second thing is, what am I trying to accomplish with the thing? What's my goal? And is this something I'm just trying to connect with people? What am I trying to do? Or is this something I just want a thing? Location also kind of matters, because is this something I can do offline where I don't need internet connectivity? Or is this something that I need to be connected to the world? I need high bandwidth, I'm going to be streaming things. And then your state of mind, right? Is this me sleep deprived on tons of caffeine, or is this like me like after a bunch of sleep? Not really. This is actually what you're trying to do. Is this for enjoyment? Is this for research? Is this concentration? So when I say the word context, this all actually matters when you're actually thinking about which device do you choose. And when you think about it, this doesn't happen consciously. You don't sit to myself and say, what's my consciousness right now? Am I in touch with my inner Zen? Do I use my tablet or whatever? We just make this decision. So if we were to break this down some more, when we look at personal computers here, about 69% of the stuff happens in the home, about 31% out of there. And what we're doing basically is task-oriented. We're focused on what we're trying to do. For instance, I'm coding. I don't really like to do that on my cell phone because the screen's too small and I'm not really great with the touch screen. Yeah, I would write all sorts of bugs if I did that. Okay? It's very time-focused, you're serious, you're solving problems. Okay? It's very detail-oriented. Okay? And on average, this is about 24% of our daily media interactions. And what we're usually doing is finding information, keeping things up to date. We're trying to update things ourselves. That's what we're doing on our thing. Now, if you look at our smartphones, about 40% of this is out of the home, 60% in the home. Okay, and this is on the go. And what we're trying to do is communicate and connect with people. We're texting, we're social media, so forth, and it's usually a short burst of time. You get in, get out, you do whatever you're going to do, and you're on your way. And it's really the need for information quickly. And this is about 38% of our daily media interactions, and it's communication and entertainment. So that brings us to a tablet. If you notice, the tablet is mostly used in the home. And it's usually with entertainment or shopping or so forth, and it's usually based around leisure time, which is kind of interesting. I was just speaking to a colleague who won a free tablet. I was like, well, did you bring it with you? I want to see it. Well, I actually left it home with my wife because she likes to watch movies on it. So that's where we left it, which is a recurring story. I hear that all the time, which is a perfect fit for your tablet. And it on average is around 9% of our media interactions, and it's mostly for entertainment and communication. So a while ago at BYU, we run CAS, and we've been running for about 10 years, and we have a bunch of analytics, which I might add for, I guess, a shameless pitch for our next topic is understanding your audience through numbers. The shot out of 10 is going to be a great presentation. But anyway, so we're the shameless pitch for the next talk. But we were looking at our CAS numbers, and at BYU we have more or less 40,000 people. If you say about 35,000 daytime students, 5,000 staff, faculty, so forth. And we're looking at our numbers, and we have about 150,000 logins happening daily. So if you do the math, that's like 2.5, 3 times more people than everybody. Like, how does that work out? You say, well, maybe it's multiple logins, maybe it's something else. Well, as we drill through the numbers, it's actually multi-screening. When I say multi-screening, is people using multiple devices in tandem, right? For instance, I'm using my cell phone with my laptop, or I'm using my tablet and my cell phone together in tandem, or I'm using my tablet and my TV. And when you look at it, how many people do the same sort of thing? We're using my phone to time how fast I'm talking, as well as my laptop here to present. Okay? We do this all the time. We don't really consciously think about it. And when we do that, there's really 2, I guess, behaviors that we actually do. The first one is sequential usage, which is basically we're moving from one device to another. Okay? This is like a use case of, say, a student has a cell phone, it texts him saying, you have a homework assignment. So he says, oh, great. Gets on there, gets home, switches it to his desktop where he takes the quiz and so forth. Now, a lot of times that interaction could be seconds, it could be you switch from one to the other. It also could be quite a bit of time. For instance, one of the common things to do is to email yourself a link. right? I found something great on my cell phone. I'm really interested. I want to like buy it later. So I email myself the link to do more research on my desktop. That's a very common thing to do. And a lot of times we use search as sort of that bridge to kind of bridge us between different devices. The other way you can actually interact is simultaneous usage. And this is using one or more devices at the same time, either for related or unrelated activity. There's really two different ways this can break down. First way is, for instance, I'm on my laptop, I'm studying for my exam, and I'd really like to know, oh, what's the testing center like? What do the cameras look like? Is there big lines and so forth? So I stop for a second, get on my phone, look at the camera, and say, hey, there's time to go take the test. So I'm basically doing two different unrelated things at the same time in parallel. It's a complementary activity. Now, you may also do something just, multitasking. For instance, I'm watching a movie on TV, and I say, hey, I like that actor. I'd like to see one of the movies in. So I get out my tablet, go into IMDb, look them up, and go for it. So you get the same kind of behavior going on. And they're both simultaneous. So the question is, which one do users do? That's really the question. Because we have all these devices, which one's probably most popular? And that is about 90% of the time, they're working sequentially. They're basically using the devices to get them where they need to be. So essentially, the context changes over time, in which I need to accomplish, I start off with a task on my phone, and then I move to the desktop, or I start off with a task on my tablet and move to something else. That's usually the reason in which they interact. Now, this is kind of interesting because a lot of times we sort of think of our mobile apps as just one or the other, right? I'm just on my phone or I'm just on my desktop, not as an entire system. That's not the way they're using this stuff. They're actually switching back and forth between devices, and it's not really a clean world of, I use my phone for this or I use my desktop for this. We do this sort of automatically because we live in a world of screens, right? Sort of like me showing up with two laptops and so forth. So how do we break this down? Okay. Well, as developers, we really have three choices. And our basic idea for multi-screening is really we can do three things. First thing we can do is write native. And when I mean native, that means I write to whatever device. So I write code for it. So if I'm writing to an Android, I write in Java. If I'm writing to an iPhone, I write in there. And I basically do all that kind of stuff. The second option we have is we use the web browser as a platform. That's sort of the responsive approach, where basically I'm going to use the browser to navigate between all my different devices and do that. We've been doing that a long time with the web. And the last option is hybrid. We can go with the hybrid approach, which basically says I'm going to write a wrapper and then use responsive to drive the other pieces of it. Okay. Now, here's where the fun begins. Which one's better? Okay. If you were to go search on this subject, you'll find 800,000 papers that'll tell you one way or another which way it is, right? That native apps hold all their planets in orbit. That if you didn't do it that way, then the planets will fly out of orbit, right? Everyone has their opinions. And when you look at it, that's really where I think a lot of the confusion comes, because everyone has opinions, everyone's really set in their methodologies and so forth. But I wanted to take a different approach to that and basically throw out some dimensions and say, you can really decide what really fits best for you. And so the dimensions I kind of threw out first are user experience. How well can your users interact with what it is you're doing? The second one is reach. How many of your users can actually use what this is? What's your population that can actually use this application? Because we all have budget constraints. We don't want to just waste our time on something that's only maybe 1% of our student body. What's our return on investment? What's our time to market? How easy can our students and faculty and so forth discover what it is we're doing? Is it something that they're going to have to navigate to find this or not? And then lastly, how easy can we measure that we actually hit our audience, right? Are there analytics? Are we able to actually decide what's happening? So let's start off with the native. User experience is really where they hang their hat. If you read through the papers, usually always start off with, our SDK is the best. We can interact with, our OS. We can create snappy, rich designs that are so much better than anyone else. We have access to the hardware natively. They have the best UIs ever. That's usually how they go. And this is really where the native apps hang their hat. And they do. They generate great applications. And that's the case. However, the drawback of that is by writing native, you're basically having a problem multi-screening, right? Because, for instance, if I write my iOS app and they're using a Samsung TV, Samsung TVs don't do the Apple thing. So if you're going to do that, you have to deal with the fact that there are multiple different vendors, and not everybody plays together, and that's just sort of the nature of it. So the other problem is reach. Now, these numbers, I think, are a little bit conservative, but 50% of mobile users have smartphones, okay? And in 2013, there was a 56% increase in mobile, okay? The fact of the matter is, everybody's buying mobile. There's lots of mobile. I think at the keynote, they showed different slides of the increase of mobile usage throughout the world. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that would dispute that mobile is definitely hot and people are definitely buying mobile things. The real problem, the real trick with this is mobile's a different animal. In fact, it's not so much about everyone having mobile, it's the fact that you need to actually get people to actually download your app and retain it. Okay, you need to actually retain your customers. So I produced the Gartner graph here. These are the magic quadrants. If you don't know what these are, basically, I don't know why they're magic, but the basic idea behind these is that they basically tell you kind of where you fit in things. If you look on here in quadrant 3, you see the education thing, and about within 3 visits for about 30% of your customer base in 90 days. So that means basically after 90 days, 70% of your customer base is gone. They've uninstalled your app and you're out of business. Okay, so that's a challenge. If you're going to go the native route, you have to do that. Now, certain kinds of things you notice on the graph, it works really well for, like entertainment, games, that sort of thing, where you basically want to churn your stuff around, right? For instance, as I travel, I have the Delta app installed on my phone. When I get back to the office, I don't really need that, so I uninstall it, right? You do that all the time, or TripIt, or whatever your thing is. We're always constantly uninstalling things back and forth. And so if you go down the native route, that's just, you have to agree, that's just the way you're going to have to do business, is you've got to expect that your app, first you have to get in the door, and then hopefully you have enough retention to actually keep your people there. Okay, that's just kind of the way it is. Okay, your return on investment is you get to participate in the mobile arms race. And when I say the mobile arms race is, things are changing so fast. I mean, constantly, you buy the iPhone, whatever, and 6 months later, now that's just obsolete. Now you're old school, and so forth, right? And you, not only when you get into this arena, you're thinking about native, right? So I could be writing to a TV, I could be writing to your PC, your own labs, I could be writing them to a tablet. So you're in this arms race. So your return on investment is you're going to basically need to have that sort of skill set in-house. Okay, you're going to need to have guys that are great at Objective-C. You're going to need to have people with Java. You're going to have all that kind of experience because that's native development. You need to know how it works. And maybe you have that kind of staff, maybe you don't. It's kind of up to you. Which leads to the next thing, time to market. In the mobile world, your market is basically the App Store, which you're kind of at the mercy of the App Store. So depending on which App Store we're talking about, Apple has an approval process you have to go through. So if you need to get this fast to market, if that's an issue for you, then you're going to have to deal with that and have to basically say, we're not in charge of our release process, we have to go through the App Store. Okay? It's a little bit different, but that's just kind of it is. But the flip side of that is you also have the built-in marketing, the marketing engine, if you will, of the App Store. It gets in front of people. And the fact is, a lot of people on their devices use the App Store to get stuff. So it's a great way to get product in front of people. So for our portals and for our various different things, you basically have a built-in marketing solution right there. You can basically say, students go look in the App Store for the BYU app, or look for whatever app we're looking for. So it's a great thing from that perspective. Now, for our analytics, we have lots of solutions here. I mean, this is actually a great way to figure out whether people are using it. So the App Store itself basically tells you how many downloads there are. So it gives you some sort of clue. It doesn't tell you how long they've been retained, but it does tell you how many downloads you've had and how much people are using your application if there's basically people using it. You also can instrument your code with Google or Omniture or any of that kind of thing. So there are lots of opportunities there. All right, let's switch gears. Responsive. Now, responsive, the idea behind responsive is the fact that you use the web and you use CSS and HTML to reshape your application. So if you're using Lanyard, for instance, you notice it renders well on a cell phone. If you look at it on the web, it looks like a web page and so forth. Same basic idea. With the portal, if you notice, it looks great, not like normal, like the usual portals we see. on the browser. When it goes to mobile mode, we use the M universality, and it looks like the mobile device. It looks nice, okay? Now, if you read through a lot of the literature on there and a lot of the naysayers of responses, they'll tell you, well, JavaScript just doesn't run fast. It's kind of slow. It's kind of wonky when you look at the stuff. The widgets are really slow and so forth. Now, granted, it kind of depends on a lot of things. When you usually hear the word slow, it could mean the network is slow and the widgets and Ajax calls are really slow. It could mean they're just on a cruddy phone. It could mean a lot of things. So take that for what it's worth. It kind of depends, and you're going to really need to do some analytics if you can do the responses to make sure you understand slow. Now, one of the problems you have in the mobile arena is there's just a wide variety of phones. You may have people that are using flip phones that are barely, text screens, or you may have the high-end, Galaxy S5. So slow is kind of relative, but when you're writing to all those devices, you need to take account for not everybody has the best of all phones. Okay, but there are lots of great examples of it. You can look online. There's lots of universities that are using responsive design, and it's pretty straightforward. Now, the reach of the internet is like, what, 7.8 billion internet users worldwide that are using browsers right now. I mean, that's a rough estimate. I mean, you can look at the site that said yesterday, the internet, where it actually shows you the current number of users. I mean, it's like crazy. And if you look at the number of mobile users, that's like 1.2 billion mobile clients. So we definitely, most people most likely are going to have a mobile browser of some sort. So you're going to definitely reach most of your students by going this route. Okay. Return on investment. This is really where the responsive design crowd hangs their hat. Because basically the idea is you have a whole bunch of web developers, you have staffs of this, they understand HTML, they understand CSS, and they can leverage those skills to do it. And you don't need to write an app for the iPhone, you don't need to write a mobile app, you don't need to write any of this sort of stuff. You can just write a web app once and turn around the people. That's basically the idea. And so it's got a great return on investment. You're not really going to have to invest in anything new, no new framework, so forth. Okay? The time to market is basically as fast as you can turn out websites. Right? As fast as your business allows you to turn stuff out is as fast as you can crank out mobile stuff. Okay? And as far as discoverability goes, search engine optimization has been around a long time. People are really good at this kind of thing. We know how to do keyword searches. We know how to get that kind of thing in front of students. I mean, this is nothing new here. So it's really great from that standpoint is we already know how to do all this stuff. So it definitely does that. And as far as analytics go, this is like old hat. We know how to do Google Analytics. We know how to do that. In fact, if you don't know how to do that, again, show up to my class here, and we can do that again. We can go through that. And there's great ways to do that, especially with your portal. So that leads us to a hybrid app. Okay, when I use the word hybrid, I mean, this is the part where I kind of do a little hand waving because it kind of depends on how your hybrid is done. This is kind of, if you're familiar with the uMobile, this is the phone gap approach. Basically saying, you know what, we're going to write a little wrapper around things, and then we're going to make a whole bunch of calls to the HTML. Okay? Now, if you do this right, the user probably couldn't even tell the difference. Right? If you do this wrong and you're like just put a deep link into your thing, then that's pretty obvious that that's what you're doing. Okay, and that's pretty. At the end of the day, we don't really need a bunch of links on a page. That didn't work in the portal. It doesn't work any better on a mobile device. Okay, the deep links have their point, but let's just not write deep links. That's kind of a cop out. So if you do this right, they can't really tell the difference. They can't really tell when I switch gears. Now, it's a little bit bigger than that because running on a native device is more like a client. Running on the web, you know how to do single sign-on. So not only do you have to figure out how to do the web, but you need to make it seamless. That's where probably the pain points are going to be is how to get the security to match up right, how to deal with the password and so forth, so that it is seamless like that. You can switch back and forth and single sign-on works. Now, as far as reach goes, hybrid apps actually give you a really nice opportunity here. So not only do you get the benefits of the web, that you can basically do all the SEO tricks and all that kind of thing, because people can still navigate to your website. However, now you have the opportunity to get in the App Store, because App Stores traditionally don't let you just put a mobile web app and just a link, right? So you get a really great opportunity here and really better reach to your customers. In the fact that now you can find me via searching on Google, and you can now find me in the App Store. So you basically broadened your market. And as far as your students, faculty, staff, you now give them the opportunity of Well, if you're the kind of person who likes to install apps on your phone, then great, go that route. If you're the kind of person who likes to download things via the mobile, just use a mobile browser, great, do that. You give them some choice here. So, as far as your return on investment, you have to invest in someone that can write these little shims for you, or you use phone gaps and invest in a tool that can do that. But it's not really a great hurdle to go over. Okay, these tools, a lot of them are free. If you go the uMobile route, which I'd recommend, it's open source, so you get to be able to do all these kind of things, and gives you a nice foothold into this new market. You're sort of expanding the portal, if you will. So, the time to market. This is kind of where you get the best and most and worst of breed, right? So, best in terms of, since you have the benefits of the core of your UI being responsive, you can turn that out as fast as you want. However, if you want to change the shell, you're at the mercy of the App Store, okay? Which, hopefully, you should be changing the shell all the time. I would hope not, right? So if you're in the uMobile world, you wouldn't be changing that quite a bit. However, your portal layouts, that sort of thing, you're going to change quite a bit. So hopefully you drive the right pieces of your content like that, okay? So you can discover it, you have a great opportunity there. As far as analytics go, you have great opportunities. You can use both Google Analytics, you can use Adobe, okay? So if you go to these great conferences on mobile and portals and so forth, this is the part where they say, for $19.95, I'll tell you the rest of the story, and don't give you any answers, right? Because now you basically have the basic idea, right? Users are using multiple screens. That's the way of the future, okay? We can use native, responsive, and hybrid. Those are basically our options. So which one actually is the best, right? This is like where everyone comes out and says it depends, right? Which I'm not going to do that for you. That's kind of weak. And so that leads us to uMobile and uPortal. Okay? Portals, traditionally, when we start doing portals, the whole reason for portals is personalization, right? Our universities are built on silos. We have a registration system, we have an HR system, we have all these silos, our learning system, we have all these things that built up over departments, over years, right? And our students, faculty, and staff don't really want to see the world in terms of silos, okay? They want to basically say, I want to get into the university, I want to interact with my grades, I want to be done. I don't want to remember the funny name we gave our registration system. Okay? I don't want to remember the URL, and so forth. So the portal is situated in a great situation there. The portal basically sits horizontal to those apps and gives us an opportunity. They can use university resources their way. Now, uMobile changes that slightly, right? In the past, our portal users have been web browsers. Now we're basically saying, you know what? Not only can you see the university your way, you can actually choose the device you want to see them. Gone are the days of IT being able to mandate what they want to do. When I say mandate, right, if you think about how universities have changed over the years, right? We started out doing our registration process, at least at BYU was this way, that everybody would show up at the gym and would have a bunch of cards and they have to punch them out. Hopefully there's like nobody has ever actually done this before. Okay, it's well beyond my time. My parents would have done this. They show up to the gym, they get all their cards, they get their schedule, they have to stand in all these lines and go through it. Well, we bought these mainframes. Now there were like a dozen screens that you could like get on there, and they had a phone system you could get on, and IT would say the way you interact with the registration system is you get on the phone, you type all these like numbers in, and somehow your classes get registered. Right? It was kind of hokey, but it worked. Well, then the web happened to us. We said, you know what? You don't have to use the phone anymore. You know, long distance calls. You can use whatever browser you want. You can use IE, Firefox, Mozilla, and whatever flavor. So we gave them a handful of options. And you see how we kind of progressed, but IT as in general would just mandate this is the way you interact with your system. Well, as mobile and the bring your own device sort of thing happened, users actually making a choice, right? When the guy is sitting in front of his TV watching a show and has this text appear on his thing saying you need to do homework, you have a homework assignment, we don't basically dictate to him, well, you have to do your homework on your browser. He really has a choice. He can say, you know what, I'm going to do my homework on my tablet because it works for me right now. Okay? He may decide he wants to do it on his desktop. He may decide to do it on his phone. But that's not really an IT decision. So the way in which our portals work now is we've changed them to the fact that we can now, our users decide how they're going to interact with us. Okay? So we're still well situated, but we need to basically drop the assumption that we can dictate how they interact with our portals. Now, what does that mean to our portal content? Now, back in the day, I usually would cite the 80-20 rule that 80% of the people use 20% of your systems. Okay, and there's this like great sweet spot to make great portals. Okay, but when you think about it, turning some screen into a mobile app with responsive really isn't a great solution. You just end up with a web page is now responsive. You need to take the time to say, let's think about this mobile first. What's it going to look like? What's it going to do? What's it going to, is one screen really the option? Or maybe we should rework things, right? Let's do some UI design. I think of sort of the web service sort of like fad that kind of went through is let's turn every web page into a web service, and then you end up with a bunch of ready web services. The same thing works with the web pages. If you just take a web page, turn to responsive, now you end up with a cruddy web page that's responsive. Okay, it doesn't. Turning to responsive doesn't fix a bad UI. Okay, if it's bad UI, there's no fix for that, right? In CS, they say there's no fix for a bubble service. It's still at the end of the day just a bubble service. It's still a cruddy solution. So when we do our design of our portal and our content, we need to take into account the fact that first, our users are going to be living in a multi-screen world. Okay, so what does that mean? Are students going to be using our portal on a mobile device or a screen? Right? You say, well, our students don't really actually do a whole lot of that kind of thing. Yesterday, I demoed some HR portlets. Right? That's probably about the simplest use case. Is students have a job. They're going to punch in, punch out, right? There's really just two buttons, two things they can possibly do. It's in our portal, and it's really popular. People like to use that because they like to get into the portal. It's one place to punch in, punch out. Well, what if it was at the concession stand, and they have a big screen monitor telling who's in and who's out, and it's a touchscreen? How would that change the way in which you interact with this, right? I can walk up to it, slide it over. Right? See how I can actually change the interaction. So we have a lot more opportunity to add value to our customers by basically sitting and thinking through the context, because really at the end of the day, context is king. Context is really what drives the decisions of whether or not we use this thing or that thing. Okay? The key to this is we need to take the time to spend understanding our constituency, because that's really where the value add here is with our portals, is the fact that we understand how faculty work, we understand how staff work, we understand how students work. For instance, most of us know what it's like to lecture in front of a classroom, right? We all went to school, we work at a university. If you don't know what it's like, go to class someday with your students and figure out what it's like, right? We have the laboratories there. But we have the great opportunity here is to add value to our faculty, staff, and so forth by examining context. And we can basically take our portal, which is really well situated, and give it more context, give it more ability. For instance, if a faculty member is going to his class, he walks in, he's probably going to want to present some slides. However, he probably wants to take roll. Now, in his mind, he doesn't really have any clue where the main role system is. So he gets into the portal and would want to take roll. Now, he probably wants to do that on his phone, but another faculty member says, oh, I'm going to do that on my laptop. So we have this great opportunity to do that. And so perhaps, I guess the message I'm trying to leave here is take the opportunity to understand your context. Take the opportunity to understand what the content's in there for, and put it in context so that your faculty, staff, and so forth use it. Okay. The other thing I kind of wanted to bring out is, first off, it's not really a question of app stores or mobile, right? You read through these papers and it's mutually exclusive. Either you're with us or you're not. And when you think about that world, and you're sitting there looking at people using their devices, they don't really think of the world in terms of app stores and browsers. That's kind of what the title of this whole talk is. They actually don't even consciously think about it. When I brought all my laptops with me, I didn't need to think what the context I need this laptop for, that laptop. Our students don't think about that. They don't go through this exercise of, well, should I interact with the portal today via the browser? Or maybe I should do the app store. They don't really do that. They basically do what makes sense in their context. And so if it makes sense for them to have the uMobile installed on their phone, they're going to do that. If it doesn't, then they'll do it. So the answer here is really, it's about choice. We need to provide them the choice and the ability to look at what they want and give them choices. And when you look at it, really that's really what the portal has been all about all the beginning, is to provide you a choice. Give you the opportunity to personalize the way you view the university, personalize the way you view the silos, personalize the way you use the web. But traditionally, that's always usually been through the web. And so this mobile and pervasive multi-screening has really given us a great opportunity to reevaluate that, not only are we giving you a personal view of the university, but we're now letting you choose how you want to interact with the university. Okay? So basically the punchline here is, with Bring Your Own Device, is we really need to get the context right. Basically, we need the right content in the right way for the right device. That's really what the punchline here is with it. That's pretty much what I got. So I'm going to kind of open this up to questions because I'm sure there'll probably be some, if anyone, or it's maybe too early. Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, so you talked about using multi-screens, kind of like sequentially. Do you have an example of people using screens together at the same time?
Like, what do you mean, like?
Like you said, like 90% of people, when they use multi-screens, go from one device to another. Do you have a use case example for the other 10%? Like, what are they doing?
Well, they're actually usually more the simultaneous sort of thing. They're just sort of multitasking, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times, if you're not usually doing simultaneous, you're usually multitasking. You're just sort of doing another task that you're just had this epiphany like, oh, I need to go do this. And so they're just basically doing things in parallel. Okay. And it's not really like a black and white line. It's very gray as to when people switch back. So.
Can you talk a little bit more about the philosophy in uninstalling and kind of how you get people to deal with that as an issue?
Well, the people that really have to deal with it is not the person doing the uninstalling, right? I mean,
oh no, that's their choice.
Yeah, that's the brutal reality. And in the web, we kind of, there's sort of the statement, you're always one click away from the next guy. I mean, it's really actually the world we live in. It's just a lot more brutal. The fact that with the web, you could always come back at some other point. But in the world where you're in the App Store, the next guy can come along with a better app than yours, and you can just be done. The hard part is basically don't invest so much into it that you're not out a whole lot of money. Right? You spend millions of dollars on this mobile app only to be uninstalled in the first 30 days. Yeah, so really the message you need to present that to are the stakeholders and realize that this is basically a very transient world, that chances are you're probably going to get uninstalled unless you have some awesome app that they get hit. And with our portals, that's going to be a pretty hard sell point to get to your students, saying, we have the world's best portal, install us now. I mean, people come to university not to install the portal app, it's to actually get an education. So we're already sort of behind the 8 ball as trying to get that out. I mean, advertisement does help, but you're still going to have to live in that world.
Is that uninstall being driven by these apps being terrible bloatware, and so I got to get rid of them to get space back on my room for baby pictures, back on my device for pictures, or is it driven by being really annoying that, I mean, after the 17th time you ask me to rate your app, I'm just going to delete it? Or is it really, even if we have a good app, we're still going to get uninstalled?
I'd probably say yes to all those. Right? I mean, it's all about the choice. I mean, that's a cop-out answer. But I think there is definitely the annoyance factor, right? If I have to log in every time and with my touchpad type in my password every time, I'll get annoyed by that really quick. I'm like, the heck with that, I'll just use the web, right? At the same time, I don't know so much if it's I need the space back, because I mean our phones are getting bigger and badder every day, so I don't know if necessarily that's a particular problem. But I think it's probably annoying, or my context is, it's my personal phone, so personally I don't need the portal app every single day of the week on my phone. It's sort of my way of doing things. I'm Facebooking, I'm Twittering, I'm whatever. I'm just thinking about other things, and the portal just isn't front and center. Does that make sense?
I'm kind of curious, do you know, how much do you know about the statistics for the app stores? You talked about, the downloads. The app stores allow you to gain some statistics because it'll tell you the number of downloads, how many people are currently using it. Does the number of downloads, does it keep track of, say if I download the app, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool, and then I uninstall it, and then I come back later, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to get that back, I download it again. Does that tick another thing off? Does that tick another download, or does that say, you've already downloaded it once? I mean, how accurate are those statistics?
It just takes down another download. So you sort of get a false sense of security looking at it saying, oh, I got, say 10,000 downloads, but you don't really actually know how many of those downloads are repeat customers or that. So you don't really have a concept of how much churn you're.
It's similar to the statistics that you get where you have multiple screens where it counts
Yeah.
into Google Analytics. Or, oh wow, we've got 3 times the number of our student body all in.
Yeah, and so a lot of times, you sort of get you see the slide and we're like, oh, we got 10,000 downloads for our mobile app, but you're never really actually accounting to how many people uninstalled you and said to heck with you and then came back and said, okay, I really actually did do that. So yeah, it's sort of just kind of realize when you see those numbers that, okay, that's a nice number, but there's a little hand waving going on. So.
Just out of curiosity, what is the BYU mobile approach? Do you guys have a hybrid approach or are you native?
That's actually kind of an interesting discussion. This might be the part where I hit the pause button on the record. So the portal team, which I'm on, we're in one division, and our mobile group is in a completely different division. So, and it's partially because of a lot of people who do enterprise architecture like discrete boxes that they're in, and don't really see the world as a sort of hazy mess of things like that. So they definitely approach it their own way, and we've gone the native approach, which is the true native app, and we use web services all the way back. And so that's kind of the approach we're taking. Well, we as in BYU's strategic direction. So try that. Any other comments or whatever? Perfect. Thank you for coming.